Metra. And the reason why we're doing this certification program for our partners is to really lower the cost, because it'll be far more cost competitive for our partners to be doing deployment services locally like this, instead of having trying to fly resources in and incurring additional costs and the likes of it. So this is the main reason why we are pushing so hard for our partners to get certified. And let me just share my screen for a while. Like, this is not final, but we are still in the midst of updating this one. Just one single slide so that all of you can see what we are actually talking about. So in terms of deployment services for water, now we have two different deployment services for our partners. And for those of you who have been around for quite some time, you know that we call these activations. So if you can see the table on the right side, we have the Metra deployment services, the ones in green. That will be the one that we'll be doing today. And really to clarify this, because there was quite a bit of confusion earlier, the Metra deployment services, the one in green, and the workshop that we'll be going through today and tomorrow, this is to train our partners to be proficient and to be able to handle Metra, and to extend in the future, once you are certified, fully certified, you will be able to manage and deploy basic Metra instances for manual and AMR. And then AMI is a lot more complicated. So if you look at the table again, the blue table, or what we call the AMI water deployment services, this will be the progression path that you want to take if you want to get into AMI deployment. So at the end of these 2 days session, once you get fully certified, assuming that you pass the quiz and the exams at the end of day 2, you get fully certified. And if you want to get into AMI, where you can deploy LoRa or cellular or even mesh, depending on where you are, and also the solutions that's offered in your location. So AMI deployment services will be a separate activation, and those will be done through co-deployment projects where customers are actually paying for the project. So AMI will be a different activation. So just to be really clear that at the end of the certification for these 2 days, you will be certified for manual and AMR. And if you want to go for AMI, there will be a separate discussion and activation altogether. Now, this table is a little bit outdated because we have actually been to launch quite a number of new options moving forward. We have the Metra device manager module, we have increased hypercare support functions, and then the earlier AMI deployment services, it is only for cellular or NB-IoT. So I'm making that to be available and to be able to address LoRaWAN. And also we have the Metra Analytics that's going to be launched pretty soon. So there's going to be a lot of changes to be made to AMI. So, and then again, for the Metra deployment services, I see that some of you have attended the session last year. We are also making some updates to the Metra deployment services piece. So like, if you can see, like we are going to offer standard prices and sales for each level. So for partners who have seen this last year, that we are going to make some revisions. But as you get to fully certified, as you get fully certified, you get access to the prices and the sales. And I'll be coming back to the fully certified partners at a later time with those updated prices and sales for this year. And apart from that, the training for these 2 days will be very much focused on the Metra only. But we do realize that there's some additional training to be done for our partners on how to use and configure the Cyber 5s and also the RF Masters. So we have not put together the full training curriculum for those 2 items yet. So for those of you who get fully certified for Metra over these 2 days, bear in mind that I'll be coming back to you at a later time once we have the curriculum fixed and available for Cybos and RF Master. Okay, so that's my piece, and I'll hand the time back to Ryan again. Thank you. Ryan?
Thanks, Jack. Is there any questions to what Jax has provided or shared before we move on? Feel free to type that into the chat and we can answer as they come through. Okay, I'll take silence as all good. So again, thanks guys for the introduction. Thanks all for joining. Just in terms of the structure, I will, as Jake said, go through the Metra content for the web application, the hosting of that solution by Icon, what that entails. But please feel free to. I think the best is to, if everyone is on Teams, just raise your hand. I've got a screen open where I will hopefully notice if you have a question, or type it into the chat. So hopefully we'll try and make this as interactive as possible. That way it's not just myself running through a presentation. So please feel free to ask any questions, stop me. Hopefully that will enable you to learn and get the information you require for this. So what I'll do, someone did ask a question, would we need a Tometra account for this workshop? Yeah, so one of the exercises will be done or required with a Tometra tenant and account and login. If you don't have access, just please send a message about the fact that you don't have access to your Tometra tenant and who you're working for, as I won't know who's who in the zoo, so to speak. So that way I can see about adding you to that particular channel partner's existing Tometra tenant, so you can do it there. If that's not possible in terms of there is no Tometra tenant yet, I will sort something out. So, but just let me know. Any questions on that? Yeah, thanks. Just send the Vincent as well. If you can just let me know which company or Tometra. Yeah, Pacific. Thanks, Vincent. Yeah, just so I don't lose track. Okay. With that, I don't think it won't do a roundtable here. I'll introduce myself though. So I am Wynand de Toy, based in Adelaide, working for Icon since 2008. So it's been, what's that now? going on 17 years. So it's been a while. Through various departments. When I started, I looked after service delivery, technical support, pre-sales, and customer support. As we evolve and grow locally in Australia, my role has become more around looking after the pre-sales and technical sales activities for our region, for APAC, for ANZPI, so Australia and New Zealand Pacific Islands. So today I will, as I said, take you through the Tometra solution. And so with that, I will share my screen. And we can run through the agenda for the next few days. And again, just ask any questions you may have. Hopefully everyone can see my shared screen.
Yep, sure enough.
Thanks. Okay. So I will be running through a slide deck that's been provided to me. It's not my general pre-sales technical sales slide deck. It is on Tometra functionality, what it is. Let me just activate the screen. And an overview on how to use it. So what we'll do today, again, sorry, I forgot to mention as well in my introduction, not sure what time zones people are in, Jax. Do you know roughly whether we've got some people in the Pacific Islands where it will be almost already coming too close to business hours for them?
Yeah, so we have partners dialing in from New Zealand, and that's the furthest region, and then we also have partners dialing in from India. That's the other end of the region as well. So pretty wide mix, and so I think for New Zealand it's +5 hours from Singapore. Right now it should be about maybe 3 or 4 p.m. And then for India it should be about 9 a.m.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm bang in the middle, so I've got 2.5 hours now and 2.5 hours there, east and west. So I'm not sure if people have to leave at 5 or 6 or so p.m. on the New Zealand side, but if you can, stay dialed in for as long as possible. The session is recorded, so you can catch up before the next session as well. Anyway, so looking at the agenda for today, so we'll go into some introduction on what Temetra is, what the architecture is. There's a couple of breaks there. We can push through them, but once we reach those time, we can just take a quick toilet break and a drinks break and come back. There is I'll call it a lunch break. You don't have to use up the full hour, and I'm sure people will, especially on the New Zealand side, maybe have some dinner and come back if you can. If not, anyway, we'll sort the timing of those breaks out. And then we'll just continue on what Temetra is, some administration stuff, how that looks in terms of the structure for the SaaS and the support processes, and again go into how Temetra functions in terms of that end-to-end customer use cases, that specifically route and schedule management. Those are the predominantly used use cases for Temetra. They're not the end-all and be-all for Temetra. Those are the basic Temetra meter-to-cash sort of functionality that customers utilize today in order to read meters and bill their customers. So the focus for this session and tomorrow is obviously the basic Temetra. Just Kundu, just you're on mute, so unless you've got a question. Yeah, so we're looking at those use cases in Temetra that are high priority. But again, if you've got questions, let me know. And if it takes us on a different path for a little bit, that's fine. And then we can just come back and continue. And then we will just do a quick introduction of the Field app as well. So any questions on that one? If you've got any questions on the agenda, send me a chat or a message, and we can ensure if there's something of importance, we cover those as well that may not be listed here. Okay. So with that, I'll make a start. So Temetra, for those that are not familiar with what Temetra is, Temetra is a SaaS hosted cloud-based solution that we offer utilities and councils to essentially operate on polluted areas. And this can range from the assets in the field, such as meters, loggers, sensors, through either manual meter reading, walk by or drive by, where someone jumps into a vehicle, goes to location and pings devices. So that's what we call AMR, or with a network outage solution. So that's the AMI piece that Jake's alluding to. So Demetra is capable to assist utilities and councils for all devices and meters to be able to collect the data and generate bills. So in order to send the end consumers a bill which the utility or council obviously charge the consumption for. That is the predominant use of Demetra. It's not all that Demetra can provide. So it is there essentially to provide a single source platform, because Demetra is agnostic in the sense of it being able to incorporate devices and meters and sensors from any and all suppliers or vendors. Yes, it's an iTron solution, and obviously our focus is to ensure the functionality of iTron products, but we have already and incorporate a whole load of non-iTron vendors and suppliers of meters, loggers, sensors, and networks. We can go into how that is a bit later on, as well as we cover marketing material. So essentially, that's where we operate with Demetra. We provide different departments within the utility or council space access to Demetra, and they can then go in to perform things such as meter replacement programs, data analysis, again, the meter billing. There could be non-revenue water. So when you look at water utilities, the data that's collected from Demetra can be used to perform an analysis within that network called DMA in order to understand where losses are occurring. So that's what I mean by non-revenue water. So it can also act and perform as a network management tool in order to target areas within that network to maintain and maintain the network, fix the network, and basically provide a functioning supply and demand for electricity. Any question on that? Okay. So I'm just checking if anyone had a question. I've got a couple of messages come through. No. Oh yeah. So one question was about the quiz and the exam. I can quickly answer that. So as part of the, let me go back here. So as part of the 2, at the end, we will allow enough time for a quiz. There's not, I think it's like 10 or 15 questions, so shouldn't take a lot of time, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. It's just the true and false. And the exercise itself, yes, I will be going through that stuff anyway. And once we get to that stage, I will refer back to the exercises just off screen, just so I make sure I cover it, and we can actually, essentially, I will go through what's required. It's not I'm not gonna just give it to you guys and expect you to know it without me ensuring that I've covered the material. So hopefully that answers your question. So it's not there to trick you up. It's actually quite simple. I mean, I know it's I say it's quite simple because I know it, but yeah, it's a follow along sort of exercise. If you once we get there, you'll see. No problem, Dave. Okay. I think I'm trying to dial back in. There we go. So as I mentioned before, Metra is there to provide the functionality to the utility council for them to be able to go out and collect data. Now, again, the session is manual and AMR, so the focus here will be talking about how do they have someone collect that data. So in this sense, the Metra solution performs a function or use case where the billing data that the utility or council needs to perform a collection of a read for. So every council and utility has a billing system to which they send bills out to consumers. That contains the meter and route information for the meters that they need to collect that read for. So they push that into the Metra. The Metra then goes, okay, you want to collect data for these meters. I will create a schedule. Here is the schedule for the meter reader to download and perform the read for. So all that happens in this example for the profile functionality. It offers them the ability to go out and collect the read. It's quite simple and easy to use, and because it is a cloud-based solution, it means the field personnel can download and upload everything they need from the field. So they will be able to collect and store metering data by performing that Metra and profile read in the field. Next. As I said, it is a cloud-delivered solution. So they, as I mentioned, they can access that anywhere as long as that device is connected to some type of data connection, whether it be within a SIM or Wi-Fi connection. Doesn't mean it has to be connected all the time. The app itself allows for people to download the work they have to perform within a connected service and then go offline, complete it, and load it back up. It just makes it easier if it is connected, because then I can get push notifications, updates. I can upload my work every how often back to Metra itself as well. So there is a benefit of being connected to the cloud solution or have access to connectivity. It is hosted for the ANZPI region. We have a server in Australia, in New South Wales. It is certified. It is a certified data center meeting all ISO certifications. So it's ISO 27001. So if you've got questions around security, we normally refer to the ISO 27001 approvals and certifications, as that covers pretty much anything from data reliability to how the backup processes, how often, and the security of those data centers. One positive and one big benefit of it being a cloud hosted solution provided by ITROM to councils and utilities is they do not need to install anything on their side. So they have access to Temetra. I'll call it Temetra Web or Temetra MDM. I might switch between the two, but it just means the cloud hosted solution. Now, because it is hosted by us, any new features and improvements are immediately available to the councils and utilities, because the solution is updated by our product management as new updates and improvements are delivered in that server cluster. Because a customer in Western Australia might have said, look, we want this use case or this report or this functionality, or maybe change the icons, or we want some functionality improvement. This goes back to our Temetra development product team. They evaluate it. If it is something that is of beneficial to every customer and all customers without impacting their day-to-day use cases and management of Temetra on how they use it, then Temetra will roll that improvement or feature out to the whole hosted server cluster, therefore, and data center. So therefore, a customer in Singapore will have access to it, or in India or New Zealand or wherever they are, they'll be able to reap the benefits of those improvements. So that's why this is beneficial, because it's not installed on every single customer's machine. Therefore, they have access to those improvements. So, which brings me to my next point, is therefore it's scalable. So we have customers that has Temetra for a billing area where a strata was what I was looking for. So strata meters, where they just wanted to be able to perform some reads every quarter to a strata for a billing management group. For a billing management group, they go out, read those meters, and bill those consumers. So those deployments are generally small, no issues for those, as well as to millions of meters. So we have customers around the globe, but specifically to APAC. Off the top of my head, I reckon Energy Queensland at the moment with the ANZ client Temetra cluster has the most, with 2.4 million meters, where they read their electricity meters. So I did mention a focus of water, but just to clarify, Temetra is usable for water, gas, and electricity meters. So Energy Queensland has over 2 million meters in Temetra, where they go out and read the electricity meters. We have had small projects with gas, but then obviously water is the majority of the meter reading, and councils and utilities in Australia for Temetra. That might be different in your area, but yeah, speaking from Australia where I'm based, water city water, I just said on Queensland, they have millions and millions of liters in Temetra. So the point is Temetra is quite scalable as the system is monitored and upgraded as more customers join. There is no need for the council or utility to be concerned about whether they will be able to have 100,000 meters into Metra, whether it's scalable, whether the system can handle it, because the Metra is in the back end monitored, and as new, call it space or new power is required to run the existing customers plus future proofing it, that is always ensured to meet those demands. Any questions? So I kind of talked about the small networks as well. So again, Temetra is quite easy to stand up and get started. So when we're talking about large, I'll just go back here. When we're talking about Temetra itself, being able to deliver these functionalities, whether small or large, provides customers the flexibility to start on day one. So for small networks, normally they just want to be able to export a file with the reads. So it's quite an instant deployment in that sense, because once the tenant is up and running, you can install the app on the Android device. They rate the meter, they schedule it for work, they go out, read it, and they can export the reads from Temetra to Builder Consumer. So it's quite instant in the sense of how easy it is and quickly it is to stand the network up. The Temetra solution itself for Itron do not manufacture our own handheld devices, so we don't sell the handheld devices ourselves. If it means a customer says, no, we need you to provide us a handheld, then we would still source it through a third party. That's why we say bring your own phone or tablet device, because it is an Android application. You just install it on the device, Android device, and off you go. So normally we provide recommendations. There is a, call it minimum specification. It is quite light in that sense. I think anything you buy since about 2018 will work fine. The minimum requirements is not that demanding. So anything that will be bought in terms of a phone and tablet will be more than sufficient today. I've touched on this already, not much more to say. It is easy to use. I think I'll show a screen or two of this application. It's really just a matter of entering a read, and if it's an AMR read, an automated read, then where you just click a button and it will read it for you. So there's no real complexity in that sense. Again, fully managed service. And as discussed, it's evolving software. So as customers and the technology landscape change, we always update the software and the accessibility in terms of, the functionality, being able to provide to customers are always increased in the sense of something gets added, another utility and council has access to it. It's probably going to be similar message here. Again, worldwide, we have customers. I think York here in England might actually be the largest customer globally. They've got in England a few million liters on there. But yeah, the Metro is quite scalable and capable of managing and operating large-scale utilities. Advanced interactive planning tools. So, as I mentioned at the start, the Metro does provide a landscape of functionality that falls outside of just collecting reads for billing purposes. As I mentioned, a couple of things like a replacement program, non-revenue water programs, and being able to use the UI or the solution of the Metro as a whole in order to manage and operate that network, whether it is water or predicting when to replace meters. There's a suite of tools available with Temetra that can assist and provide utilities and councils that benefit. Geographic zones and capabilities, again, doesn't matter where you are. In terms of hosting for ANZPI, that will be in New South Wales. If there is a business case that there needs to be a server, let's say dedicated, and for example, I'm just going to throw it out there in India or New Zealand or Japan or somewhere, then that is assessed and that server is then stood up for those needs. Again, analysis and reporting, Temetra has that built in, so there is basic non-revenue water in the Temetra MDM. So when I say MDM, I do mean meter data management. So the solution itself has a lot of analysis built in, and it has basic non-revenue water built in, but there is an extension to it. For example, for the non-revenue water, an extension to it to provide a dedicated non-revenue water suite of tools and analysis. Now, inside there is analysis in the sense of events, alarms, and reporting on how and what the data that was collected, whether it falls outside or inside certain thresholds, and being able to analyze based on maps as well, what and where a utility or council has to work on to resolve issues. And in terms of reporting, Temetra does have a whole lot of default reporting solutions that it integrates with, but also the ones available from within the interface is mostly CSV, XML based, with some unique ones that's been added over the years. And Temetra does have an integrated API available in order to link up with back-end management services within a council or utility, in order, such as long-term storage, data lakes, billing systems, GIS, CIS sort of solutions in order to provide specific data out and in to Temetra as well, for reporting functionality. And we will see that Temetra does have we call it advanced search page, so you can actually filter and search for things and report on what you've searched for from that page. And I'll just touch on this one. So Temetra is structured in a way where it's basically per endpoint pricing. So if you have manual meters you need to read quarterly, you essentially pay, let's say you've got 100,000 meters, you pay per endpoint, so there'll be 100,000 endpoints that are charged per year. I don't know if Jax, you wanted to add anything further on the pricing structure. And I already touched on the integration as well. So the Temetra allows and is flexible enough with its API to either push information or pull information. So a utility or council can decide, look, we want to pull the data when we want from Temetra, and they can do that with the API or with file-based or as files into a data storage or server of their choosing, and they can then do with that on their internal side as they please. But Temetra also provides a service where you could request to say, look, I want Temetra to push me X, Y, and Z files or data to this location once a week. Then that can also be, it's also flexible enough to set that up. And availability as part of contract agreements between Python and Temetra with councils and utilities. There's always availability written in there on when product management might work on it, on uptime and all that sort of stuff. So it's above 99.95% from MA. So it's quite, there's not a lot of downtime at all. And I think it's part of standard availability these days in SaaS cloud solutions. Any questions thus far? Okay. So what does it look like in terms of how it's structured? So the first thing to look at is a customer has an internal system and they want to request essentially to Temetra for these meters to be read. So what happens is they go to either manually, they can create the routes or meters in Temetra. So they create that data or that route in Temetra. But for the most part, as I said before, a customer will have had their billing system, for better word, link to Temetra, which Temetra then takes that file request and goes, yep, I know about these meters, they're an existing route. You just want to go out and read these again. I will create the schedule and you'll be able to see that route and schedule in Temetra. If it doesn't exist, it will still go, okay, here's a file request. I don't know about these meters or this route. I will create them. I will create them as a new route and I will create the schedule. Once that has happened, in Temetra, those assets on routes exist from then onwards, unless a utility or council decides to make changes. Now, every cycle, when a customer pushes that request to Temetra, they might have a new meter expansion. Let's say it's only a single meter, but in that example, they have a new meter as part of the previous route. The meter will go, yep, I know all of these meters except this one. I'll add it to your existing route and I'll add it to the new schedule as well. So all of that is managed by Temetra. Once that has happened, the schedule is created. That means the person in the field can download those jobs through the field app.
हो गया चलो चलो
All they have to do is log
कुछ
into the
करेगा
app.
नहीं आपको हम तो नहीं
It will actually, if you haven't downloaded a previous route, it will give you the option to select and download any of the schedules that's been assigned to you. And as you can see here, in an example, you just tick the jobs you want, you download the work, and then you have that on your handheld. In this case, reading on foot or walk by or visual or manual, there's lots of terms that gets thrown around by people. So walk by, manual, and visual reads are pretty much all the same. It means someone is in the field visually looking at the meter, visually seeing there's a read of 1, 2, 3, and they enter that read against that meter in the app. If it is a drive-by or AMR situation where you read the meter remotely through some communication device. So iTron has what we call an RF master that connects Bluetooth to Temetra app, and you can use that to read the iTron products. If again, Temetra is not tied down to just iTron products. I recently last year assisted and helped Tasmania Water in Tasmania, or we just refer to them as Taswater, to read non-iTron products in drive-by. So they have the vendor and supplier of those meters and their loggers. They have that communication device which they connect via the reader app via Bluetooth, and that then communicates to the individual meters in drive-by mode, or in drive-by mode. So that's just an example that in the app itself, you have walk-by, which is essentially you're going to read them one by one by yourself, taking a read. Or there's a drive-by option that allows you to visualize all the meters on the map. And I'm going to essentially, I can still obviously walk past, but driving by within a certain vicinity where the app itself will kick off a read automatically and collect the read. Any questions thus far? Okay. So once the field worker has completed collecting all the data, they then click in the app itself to go sync, and they can send the reads and photos back to Temetra from the field. So again, as long as they have a data connection, they can upload that back to Metro. Once they've done that, into Metro, there is the read. So the reads will be visible immediately once the field worker has done that sync. The back end, call it the meter coordinator, if you will, into Metro can then investigate, resolve issues. They can flag issues with collected reads back to the meter reader in the field to recheck some if needed. They could correct reads into Metro itself. And once they've done that validation, they can then decide, yep, it's now ready to go back to my billing system and export that into the billing system. Any questions on that as well? So essentially, everything can be automated except for the collecting of the read by the person in the field. So we have customers that does that whole process very manually because they like a hands-on approach. But as you can imagine, very large scale customers where they have millions and millions of meters, we can't have someone doing that sort of work manually. They, in terms of the Metro work, so I'm going to call it this right-hand side of the equation, they tend to have a more automated approach where they have APIs pulling and pushing data to Metro, validation checks that flags issues automatically, and then allows only issues to be notified to the person, that coordinator, let's say, so that those are the only ones that they check. So Metro can be as manual as you like or as automated as you like. I think, let me see, what was this? Okay, so this is just reiterating some of the information I've already said, based on how it's structured. There's a reduction, obviously, from a council and utilities costs because they don't have to have resources, time, and budget set aside for the hosting and management of an internal system. Again, it's quite easy for us to just create a tenant, give access to the customer's administrator, and they can then from there on set up their internal users. And as already alluded to, it is accessible from anywhere with a data connection. So the next one is more around, in terms of meter reading, Metro has a functionality of geo-routing. So if you remember, I talked about a customer, if I go back to here, a customer with the billing system that generates a route which schedules a set of meters for the meter reader to go read. So that step of being able to create the schedule itself is what geo-routing here circumvents. So it provides an optimization and automated method of assigning schedules to workers. So there isn't the need then for someone to come into Temetra and assign meter readers. Because what Temetra does here is based on the area assigned to a worker. So this person at the top might look after, let's say, the top quadrant here. Whenever it is a assigned period for meter reading, all the meters in this quadrant will be assigned and opened for meter reading. So automatically. So there's no one there's no coordinator in the sense of creating and scheduling jobs. Any questions? In terms of asset management, this is a pretty important point about the Temetra itself. As I mentioned in the beginning, it is an agnostic solution in that we're not tied down to just item products. We can do third-party products with Temetra. And what that means though is if you are a customer for and have a lot of different products in the field, whether it is meters from iPhone, meters from 20 different vendors and suppliers, the data collected independent of the source, in this case, will have a unified view. So it makes it quite easy for a user to come to the same conclusion or same stream in terms of how they view the data for different products, so that they don't have to log into different solutions or different screens based on a vendor or supplier's product. So this is where Temetra shines, because as you can see here, I have the customer section, I have the meter section, and I have a few tabs here based on the history, jobs, and all the reads collected. And again, that is independent of the product type. So it avoids complexity of products that customers have installed in the field. And any of those solutions, depending on the solution type, in terms of the technology, if it is a manual read, then of course it doesn't matter. You have a record of the meter type. If it's a manual read, it's just a read, whether it is an iPhone meter or a non-iPhone meter. That read is going to be manual, and that will be against that record in the same way as any other meter. And the same can be said for AMR. When I collect the data from a field device remotely through RF, you can see, if you can see here it says wireless. So this one was collected by a meter reader by clicking a button to read the meter from the street, for example. And in terms of AMI, there'll be a different tab, because AMI, or fixed network or network IoT meters and modules and loggers and sensors, provide a more frequent resolution of reads. So it might go down to 1 second of data. So in that sense, for those sorts of resolution of data, there's a separate tab for network reads that it will display more data rather than a billing read that's looking at once a month, once per quarter. And with any of those collection methods, it provides flags and alerts, not just on the UI, but they can be set to be sent to a meter coordinator or someone to investigate. So as part of the schedule, these flags will come back. Based on the flag, it will be put into the appropriate, call it bucket, if you will, because it's abnormal consumption or there's a tamper or zero interpretation of data. So if we might see that later, but every different events and alarms are flagged in a certain section, and they can then be set for investigation if required. Also on this page, so this is the meter screen or the meter details page, and this is dedicated to that single service point. So this is at the meter level, and you can also have flags and alarms based on what we call a schedule level or a route level, as well as a network level, because meters are generally in utilities and councils systems put into different groups. The most common groups are routes. You can also have DMAs, as I mentioned before, district metered areas, because those are different to the routes that a meter reader will walk or drive to collect the read. And DMAs are generally the network boundaries into which that individual meter falls. As part of Temetra, it provides the functionality for a meter reader to take and capture data. Now that is one of those options are photos. As you can see here, Temetra stores and displays the photos and the history against that individual service point. The person in the field can use the app to take these photos directly from the app, because it is then associated to the meter service point to which it was captured against, and that's then sent back to the Temetra platform. Along with photos, there is as well tags, free texts, and some other survey fields and things like that, that allows flexibility for the field reader to ensure they capture as much information as required by that council or utility. And the person who essentially sends the read to the billing system has the power then to look at the photo against this meter, look at a meter, at a photo for that meter, and go, so the read is, let's say, 456, but the meter reader, because there was a manual entry, they might have accidentally put 446. So, and because there was a flag that said it's slightly above or below the expected consumption, maybe you want to take a look, they can come in here and go, oh yeah, actually there was a human error here, I can rectify it, or I don't need to resend it back out. So I can use the photo, fix up the read, and then send it to the read. But it is also used for meter replacement strategies. You can see the old and the new meter as well. So any questions? No problem. We'll have a quick look at Android Reader. So as already said, it is also part of the Metro suite. It's also updated and upgraded once a month in terms of fixing if there is a bug that was discovered by a customer or internally, it gets updated and a new release is available. It's directly available through the Temetra UI. There is a page where you can download the APK and put it on the Android device and install it, or there is a specific Temetra Reader webpage where you can download the APK directly onto the Android device. So there's essentially two ways to get it from there. The Temetra UI method is if your Android device doesn't have a sufficient data connection, you can do that. But yeah, otherwise, the most easiest is to just open the link or the web page on the Android device and install the APK from there directly. As I mentioned, you can do all the work from the field, so there's no need to come into the office. You just upload and download as required. Anything that done in the back end, so going back here, if a person in the office makes any changes, as soon as the field worker syncs or updates, I think I can do this here. So I can go reload that. I can then receive and see any of those changes that was done immediately in the field. And as you can surmise here, GPS tracking is available because it allows for the AMR remote meter reading to be performed based on the drive-by solution. So the drive-by solution, just like any map feature on your phone or navigation device, checks where you are and then sends and uses that to determine your distance from the next AMR device to initiate a read. I probably don't need to spend too much time on this one, but as I already said, you do all your work remotely. You can upload and download everything from photos to the reads, as well as, again, when we talk about it, different audit and survey claims as well. That's part of here in terms of works performed by the field reader. So it just means, as I said, I can see any changes on the fly. In terms of the readings, so there is the visual method, as in I manually enter the read. I can take a wireless read as well in walk-by reading. So you can see here is the meter list. I can click here, it will open the meter read screen and I can visually add a read, or I can click a button to initiate a wireless read. I can enable wireless reading on the meter list screen as well. So that allows a meter reader to click here on the screen anywhere here, initiate a wireless read in AMR mode, and if you continue and do the next one without needing to go down there to view it at the next level of the meter read screen. AMR or wireless reading can be done in groups or how can I say? So in groups of, let's say, a DMA or a suburb or even a street. So if I decide I want to group these 50 meters in group one, the next 50 in group two, and so on, it allows for faster reading because now I am telling the app to try and read these 50 meters in sequence, but like with one click of a button, without having to tap one by one. But otherwise, you can also perform a read based on that billing system we discussed. So the sequence of the orders above normally is set by that billing system because the meter readers walk a certain route in the street. So they might go down one side of the street and then the next they will cross and go down the other side. Now that order normally comes from the billing system, and that is the sequence, the walk order that the meters will appear in. Tometa provides the functionality to with a different tab to be able to sort them via proximity, allowing and using your GPS location to sort them based on how close you are to me or to the GPS location of where I'm standing, as well as proximate priority. So that is based on the meters that the meter coordinator flagged certain meters as high priority. They might say these meters you need to read today, you have to do these first. So they will be flagged as priority, and I can see them in the priority table. For drive time, again, it allows for faster meter reading because now you're only driving past the meters or walking past the meters at a pace that allows the app to retrieve the read remotely from those devices. Um, Even though it uses GPS, you can download offline maps, so you don't have to be connected to you don't need to have an active data connection in order to continue performing drive-by reading. And I think I've said a lot about drive-by reading already on the other, but essentially you can see here we've got the locations of all the meters. As I drive past, you can see there's a little circle that shows it's kick-started the reading for those meters. Green tick obviously is successful and no issues, with the red ones being flagged for events and alarms. So it might mean there was a tamper alarm, or that meter has backflow, or there's an issue, or how can I say, a consumption alarm. So there was some sort of flag raised by that meter or module or logger or sensor that said, "Hey, you have a reading about to come. There is a flag, FYI." It allows the meter reader to decide whether they want to go have a look at it or not. If you click on these pins or icons, that will actually display the event and alarm as well. without having to go there physically. I can click on this and it will show a little window with the raised alarm. So, and that's when the meter reader can decide, look, it says there's a tamper. So let me just go have a look. Or reverse flow. Oh, there should be no reverse flow. What's going on here? Let me go have a look. Or it might say abnormal consumption, it's 10% above expected value. That might not warrant a site visit. It's, you know, it might have been dry summer. So those ones, the meter reader will say, it's not worth my time to go back to those. So it just allows them the flexibility to decide which ones they want to investigate or not. I have a question. I think Temetra can manually read water meters from any brand, correct? So Temetra, there's no limitation on the meter brand and model. Essentially, if I go back here, essentially in Temetra, you've got the meter type, model, information about the meters. You might see this a bit clearer later, but yeah, all that is against that service point. And so when you look at the app, you can see here is a manual entry. So it doesn't really care what meter, make, and model it is, because I'm literally entering a visual value index against it. If the AMR meters of another brand are to be read, is it possible to read AMR water meters of another brand? Yes. So for that to happen, because it is another vendor's meter that is AMR, they will have their own RF device that talks to their logger or their sensor or their meter. Itron has its own, and so will those vendors and suppliers. That device is connected to this app and the Android device via Bluetooth. And so when you initiate a read, the app itself, obviously it's connected via Bluetooth. It opens that comms to that RF device. And that RF device obviously pings and retrieves the read. Temetra then shows and records that value. And just to bring back the comment I made about this for Taswater, I did that last year. They had 3 different vendors and suppliers. One was Itron and 2 other ones. So they were reading 3 different vendor and suppliers meters in AMR using Temetra. So we enabled the comms for the other 2 third-party RF devices. They then were able to Bluetooth connect and read them in AMR. Any other questions? Hopefully that answers your question, Sonny. Next up is the consumer web portal. The takeaway here is there is an inbuilt customer web portal. It's accessed. I'll just go back here just to see if I can find. Yeah, so you can see here. This one says this is an older screenshot, but still valid. So it still looks like this, and there's a button here. I think it says now customer portal or consumer portal, but anyway, view in meter.ie. So that's where that customer portal is accessed from if you are a Temetra user and or a council and utility user, a customer might call up and say, look, I logged in and I can see XYZ. Okay, hang on, I'll just go and investigate. So I can put in the search, let's say the customer reference or the address or whatever. I want to find that record. It'll bring this up. I can click this button, and now I'm seeing exactly the same customer web portal information that the consumer was looking at. So that's one way of accessing it. The consumer itself access it by a web link that gets sent to them when they signed up. Once they log in, they will have access to all the meters that they are responsible for, where they're the account owner for. If they own more than one, then once enabled for all of those meter 1, meter 2, meter 3, they will have them listed here, and they can go to each of the individual meters and have a look at the history, some analysis, readings. They can export the reads, and they will have access to all the reads and the history of that service point up until when they are the account owner. So we all know people move in and out of houses. That is managed by the utility and council as they transfer ownership of a service point to a new account owner. So access to that is then essentially managed by someone for the consumer portal. If it is, I would call it a smart device in terms of hourly reads, for example, or 5-minute reads, or whatever the case may be. If it is non-manual and non-AMR, maybe AMR depends on the level of information. The customer will be able to set their own abnormal water usage flags. So you don't see it in this one, but there will be another one that says events, I think it is. So there's a button. If they click that, they can set up their own flow events to be triggered if they go over a certain amount, for example, in a week or in a month. So there's some flexibility. It is meant to be a basic single page of information. As we know, I mean, I'm a consumer just like everyone else. You're not necessarily going to want to flick through pages and pages of stuff. So Metro's kept it simple to be able to allow a consumer a single page of pretty much all the information that they would care about. And I was going to, oh yes, there was something and it's come back to me now. The Metro itself has integrated with third-party consumer web portals as well. If any of you are aware of Smart Energy Water or can't believe I'm going back. What's the other one again? Anyway, so we have integrated with third-party portals as well. So they don't have to go through the Metro one. The Metro one is inbuilt, easy, accessible, and set up. It's just if they have an existing portal that they already provide their customers with, then the answer is yes, we can integrate with that as well, which we have done in the past. Any questions on the customer portal? Okay. The billing system. So I touched on this already at the beginning. In terms of data exchange, Temetra provides essentially a simple API for ease of either data transfer directly via API or via file format, whether that is importing or exporting. By default and standard, that is the CSV file format. There are some XMLs. They're mainly based on legacy Icon solutions. So we just called it Icon XML 1 and 2. But since it's XML, for those that are familiar with XML file format structure, it's easily usable in terms of the internal tags as well. So we have customers that actually uses the XML, even though it was an Itron XML format for Itron internal products previously used. They use that today because for them it was quite easy to look at the tags and call the different sections within the XML file. Anyway, so in terms of integration itself, there is normally a process that gets performed between I'll say Temetra because then I refer to the Temetra service delivery and product management group. So they and the customer go through a process of what we'll call onboarding. That's integration between their billing system or any other asset management system, really. They provide a file format, a specification document, and an example in and out. We use that to integrate that file format into Temetra and essentially allow that automated communication then to happen once that has been completed. It's not that involved. It can take time, I guess. It's more where it can, I guess, take a little bit of time to incorporate because depending on the size and the security requirements, for example, Sydney Water in New South Wales here in Australia, their internal processes are quite demanding. So I think, don't quote me, but I think it took almost 10 months just for that to happen because they are so security conscious and every molecule has to be tested and check marked and everything. So I've had a customer that it was done in 3 weeks because they're quite a small council in the remote area of Australia. They don't have the same checks and balances that Sydney Water did. So for them, they provided the file format. We said, yep, we can do that. It's already essentially an existing import export that was done for another customer. We'll just make sure it works. Any use cases and formats that needs to be checked, we do that. Data change, give it to them. Took like a couple of weeks. So the deployment on that last point of on-demand file format supported. So in that case, they demanded that we made a certain file format specification, and that was it. It can be done quite easily. And essentially, what that means is in the page where a customer will want to export that file format, for them, we will add a button that exports their exact file format. So Sydney Water, for example, will have an export for their file format, but someone in, again, I'll say WA in Perth, they can't see that export because it's obviously blocked for their billing system. So each customer should have their own billing system export. with even their views. And the same could be for India, New Zealand, any of the Pacific Islands, from Singapore or anywhere. So we ensure we cater for the requirement of the billing system of Symmetra. If you're aware, billing systems are quite cumbersome, slow in terms of updating, and quite very expensive. So when we talk to customers, in the many years utilizing Temetra, I have not had one customer who was eager and open to say, yeah, no, we will change our billing system to suit your standard Temetra file format. That's never happened, because anything that affects the billing system goes through internal rigorous checks, because it may affect some other internal systems. So that's where Temetra comes in its flexibility to provide that conformity to their systems rather than the other way around. Any questions? Next up is some use cases. So let's see. I just want to see which use cases. So there's a few here. As you can see here, I did mention Yorkshire, Cairns, Tumut, Chateauneuf. So there is a global customer. I think we'll just run through some of these. I won't spend too much time. I'll touch on the high level things, but if there's something specific you want to know, let me know. Let's go. So Thames Water, 1.6 millimeters, over 300,000 AMR, and they have over 150 meter readers going out reading meters. So they, as you can imagine, with that size, how do you manage and handle such quantity of meter readers? So the best thing was to use the geo-routing feature, because now you've essentially assigned meters to each of those meter readers, and you can do that in bulk. Then whenever the reading cycle comes up, it automatically is available for each of those meter readers, and they just go out and read. So there's no one needing to assign and schedule things manually in your operator. So it's streamlined their previous method of doing things, and as you can imagine, saved them a lot of resources and time, just manually managing the volume of meter readers. Now those resources are freed up for more things like events, investigations, and things like that. So it has a flow-on effect, not just that this is automated, but now they might start picking up and fixing things as they have freed up some of their time just in terms of back-end management stuff. So this one in France. So as you can see here as well, they have basically all AMR. As you can imagine, with that 6,500 meters, if you were to do a manual or visual read, it means someone has to walk past, go into a property, get access if they don't, or someone had to pre-organize access beforehand, before the reading cycle, all of that sort of stuff. So with AMR, they can just do within 50 or 100 meters, or maybe further even. I can bring some photos of them now in Australia if you're interested. But it means they can now read all of these meters in far faster time period, because now it takes them less than a month, where before it took them over 3 months. So they have essentially saved that amount of time. So now they can spend more time on rectifying issues, following up customer complaints, things like that. And with the extra level of information, it will also help monitor and maintain the network in addressing the issues. Any questions? Okay. Next up is, I think this might be, okay, so we'll actually look at the Intermetra components individually, I think. So this one is the Intermetra, where is it? Yeah, I don't know why this is still there. But anyway, the application reading schedules and things like that, along with the field application. So there's not much more to say here. We've covered both sides. If it's not clear yet, the Intermetra Android application is purely for the field, so it's for meter readers performing certain functions, and then the MDM or web application is the backend application. So some terminology, because the network itself, it could be a grouping of, sorry, I should say, the network itself is the holistic area of which your council and utility owns and manages their meters within that area. And that could be, that is part of the consumers that they essentially bill. One area or network is essentially managed and operated by one utility. Now, the reason for this is, from that, you can have a route. Now, a route can be part, so you can have many routes, obviously, within the network, and each route normally is the grouping of meters by the utility and councils within that network. And that route is what they generally send meter readers to go to complete. Intermetra, that means, I should have clarified. So Intermetra, what the network means is, it's one single instance or tenant of the Intermetra, I can say page, because now once a customer logs in, they log into that Intermetra network tenant, and that is the whole, that gives them access to that whole Intermetra tenant for their network. So under that, then they have all different routes. And a meter here then belongs to one route. In Intermetra, you can have an unlimited amount of routes. And again, that comes generally from the billing system. As mentioned before, there are different groupings. That does not break the route grouping. Intermetra, they will sit under the route, but they might virtually be grouped under, let's say, a DMA or some meter replacement program or an audit or whatever the use case may be. They'll be grouped, again, AMR, reading group. So they might be grouped under those, call it virtual groups, but into Meta visually, they will still sit under their assigned route. I hope that makes sense. Any questions on that? Just feel free. So I missed the question here. What is the range of the reading device? So on this reading, there's not a hard and fast rule. It's depending on the technology in use. So obviously I will talk a bit more. I can reference the Itron products here. Again, if we talk about Itron's AMR, which is 434 megahertz, for the Itron Radiant protocol, it's quite good. My personal experience has been anywhere from up to about just over a K away, but that's line of sight above ground installation. You can have scenarios where they're in flooded pits, concrete flooded pits. It sits 20 centimeters below water level. Then you might have to be 10 meters away from it. So it's to the question, what is the range? It is very hard to give you an exact number because installation conditions does have an impact, as I just referenced, concrete pits submersed or versus above ground line of sight. So, and where I stand, for example, if I use this picture as an example, if the meter is over here and I stand on the street in front of it, then obviously I'm going to read it quite easily compared to if I'm on the other side of the block, because now it's obscured by this house, so the signal has to bounce around essentially to reach me. So I might be able to read it from 50 meters away behind the house. Yeah, just mute yourself if you don't want. So if I'm standing in front here on the street, I could probably read it from 200 meters away or 500 meters away, it just depends. Different antennas, different dB gains makes a difference as well. So very good question. When we commission sites for customers, generally we commission it with the customer, show them how it works, and you also get a gauge of the average distances that you can achieve. On suburban, suburban topography, normally about 200 meters, I would say, average. High rises, anything above level, I want to say 7 to 10, anything above that, you will most likely struggle a bit more. Again, depends where you stand, all of that stuff. I did a building where I could read 12 levels by circling the building on the street. Another building was 8 levels, but because of the way they were installed and the riser cupboards, instead of being in a riser cupboard up and down next to the lifts, for example, they were in individual cabinets on each floor, halfway down the hallway. Some were more constructed than others. Those buildings, that building was, I think, 8 levels, and you had to go to reception to level, I think, 2 to read them all. So again, high rises may present a bit more of a challenge from the road, but in general, give you an example, in New South Wales, Sydney Water has I can say legislation where anything, I think it was New was Queensland. Anyway, they have a legislation where anything above 7 levels has to be AMI. Anything below 7 levels is up to the building management group to choose whether they want AMR or AMI. And as part of the commissioning, then it was ITRON was asked to come out and commission that building then based on that decision. So if it's above 7 or 9, they were compulsory AMI. This was for new buildings. So just to give you an example. Hopefully that answers your question. I know I can't give you an exact range, but for those ones, it has water that I referred to earlier, because it wasn't an ITRON product, and the protocol that we're using was I think it was wireless MBUS 434 or 921, or it was wireless MBUS, I think, from memory. So the distance on that one wasn't as great. So yeah, again, just depends. So you have a network, you have your groups or your routes or your meter. Another question, what is the maximum number of meters that can be added to a route? There is no limitation on the number of meters to a route. There is how can I say this? There is a standard limitation on the number of meters per schedule. So let's see if the schedule, yeah, so we'll come to the schedule, but I'll mention it here because that was the question. So a meter can belong to many schedules because it could be scheduled to collect a read. It could be scheduled for someone to go check an alarm. It could be scheduled for meter replacement. So a meter belongs to one route but can belong to many schedules. In that sense, when a route is scheduled, that schedule itself does have a default limitation of, I think, 5,000 endpoints. I'll have to double check, but there is a limit where it won't let you assign a meter reader to it if it's above, I think, 5,000 meters, the schedule. That just means you need to override it. Is it 2,005? Anyway, you need to override it or separate that schedule out into lesser meters. The reason for that is management. So a meter reader in the field opens the job and sees 5,000 meters. Where do they begin? How do they manage that on the app? Visually, and as you can imagine, if you have a list of 5,000 meters to read, it's quite intimidating. So, and it means either that limitation then is also pointed out because the setup of your schedule or your route might not be optimized. So it is essentially to say, look, you might need to look at this route or this schedule, because if you schedule 5,000 meters, you either your meter reader is going to be unable to complete this job, because schedules by default has a certain amount of time. Yes, you can change it and all that. So the method's quite flexible, but it has these checks and balances to say, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Because it's quite a large amount of meters in a schedule. So the route itself doesn't have a limitation, but the schedule does. And that is essentially the button becomes grayed out to say, look, for now it's disabled, but you can go ahead if you need to, but it's not recommended for a person to walk around to try and get 5,000 reads. As you can imagine, that'll be months and months and months of work if it's visual reads. So in that sense, it's not optimized. Within a route, each meter has a connection reference. It is a unique identifier. So yes, utilities and councils tend to use the meter number as a unique reference or identifier, even though it's not. I think 30 to 50% of the councils that we deal with in Australia anyway, not sure about your area, but they tend to use the meter number only. Yes, we do that, but we make a note and advise them, look, you're using a meter number as a unique identifier for that service point. It's not ideal. Meter numbers change. And so in terms of a database, a unique service primary key is generally required. In that sense, if a customer says, no, we're not going to use one, or we would not like to have that unique identifier in the Metro, we would custom add one. But essentially, a connection reference here refers to that service point for that property that cannot change. As touched on the schedule, it is the actual job that the meter reader will be able to see on their handheld. Normally, it is by default if the Metro creates it by default from the billing system. That specific window of, call it open time, the from and to time for that job to be completed is a month. That is just by default. It's not static. It is changeable by the person, Intermetro, the admin person of the council and utility. And that's just a default for the automated schedules that the Metro creates. If it's a manual schedule that someone created, you can set that up to whatever you want from the get-go. But otherwise, once the schedule is created, you can go in and change that time window anyway. So in general, for billing purposes, you have one schedule per route per billing cycle. This is for billing cycles. Generally, that's how it works. The billing system initiates the read request for a route of meters. The Metro takes it and creates the single schedule associated for that route. As you may have heard me say, the Metro allows for orders, surveys, meter replacements, all of that other use cases as well. Meaning you might have a meter belonging to more than one schedule, but in the sense of your general day-to-day billing purposes, it's one schedule per route per billing cycle. An example of a meter belonging to more than one schedule, a billing cycle is initiated. The initial read for those meters in that route has been returned from the field. The meter reader gets a notification of events saying these meters have leaks, these meters are no consumption, all of those buckets that I mentioned before. They might go, okay, that's weird, while these ones have no consumption, I can then reschedule only those to get rechecked and request a photo, for example. Now that meter, let's say 10 meters, belongs to the original schedule, the billing cycle schedule, but now also belongs to a second schedule, which is the rechecks. So in that scenario, the meter belongs to two schedules, but it still belongs to one route. I hope that makes sense. The good thing about that is once those rechecks are performed, and let's say they were fixed up, in terms of it shouldn't have been zero consumption, it should have been, there's a value of 1 or 10 or whatever, it just was human error. Once those reads are returned, the reads that were entered against the recheck schedule actually populates the main billing schedule as well, which means as a coordinator that needs to export those reads for billing purposes, I can focus only on the billing schedule, because all the updated reads and everything will populate my billing route or my billing schedule, right? So I can then, I am only then required to export the billing schedule for billing purposes. The other recheck schedules, even though I may have had 100 recheck schedules, my 10 billing cycles are the valid ones. So it would have populated the billing schedule ones. So I only need to export, the billing schedules to my billing system. Hopefully that makes sense. But ask any clarification questions if you want. What is the time? I should have. That is, we've been going for 2 hours. Do we want to just have a 5-minute break? And we can keep going. I'll give everyone. Yeah, my time is 3:32, so let's make it 8 minutes and 3:40 my time. So 8 minutes from now, if everyone's okay with that. Stretch the legs, get a drink, toilet break, and we'll be back in 8 minutes.
Yep, a toilet break would be helpful. Let us all come back in a while.
Yep. I'll leave. I'll be back in 8 minutes, everyone.